because you really felt like you were doing something noble. You're like, I'm helping this homeowner because they've already got damage, when really, you're doing it in order to pad your own pocket.
Feel a little relief just talking about this a little bit out in the open and knowing that there are quite a few roofing companies. I think it's most that don't do this and that are hoping to improve the industry.
Adjusters, all right, let me see what this roofer did before I actually see if there's any storm damage to the house. And so they show up with that mindset of, is this man-made damage, before they even think about a storm.
Hook Better Leads podcast. And today I'm talking with Taylor, Ammons, and Nick Branon. And your guys' companies for me. Can you say the name of your companies?
Yeah, so my company is Hero Roofing out of South Metro Atlanta, Georgia.
And I'm Paragon Roofing. I'm out of Nashville, Tennessee.
Ooh, we got a great little sampling of roofing companies to talk to. We're talking about man-made shingle damage and roofing greed. Oh, no. And we just talked about this a little bit. We kind of were outlining this podcast. And I was saying, somebody might watch this or see this, the thumbnail of this, and say, oh, Tim's telling the insurance companies about something new. But we all know insurance companies are thinking that there's more man-made shingle damage, and they want to prove that. We're not saying anything new here, okay? Nick, if you don't mind giving me a little bit of the current synopsis of how insurance companies treat roofing companies because of this.
Yeah, so I would say what I've seen, honestly, since I've been in the industry, and it's gotten worse, I guess, the last couple of years, is that adjusters are starting to show up with that. If they see a roofer there when they pull up, they have that mindset of, all right, let me see what this roofer did before I actually see if there's any storm damage to the house. And so they show up with that mindset of, is this man-made damage, before they even think about a storm,
Yeah.
And which is kind of crazy with all the weather Georgia's had.
And if you're doing this, we're not moralizing. We're not saying you're a bad person, but I'm trying to understand how bad the problem is. I'll be real. A client of mine, I was talking to him. I said, how bad is this problem? He said, it's very little. It's a very small percentage. He also said, hey, Tim, I know you make all those memes, but the insurance company's not accepting real damage is a small problem too in comparison, percentage wise. Is that the understanding that you guys have, or would you disagree with that particular client of mine?
Well, I'll go first, Taylor. I think it's dependent on market, of course, and also dependent on, what the weather's like. In Georgia, when we, last year in 2022, we had hardly any storms. 21 we had a really bad tornado, and now we've had a lot of bad weather going into January. So in 22, these guys that are only storm-based roofers, I think you kind of see it ramping up a lot more. You see the guys are dependent on claims. It's the only way they can do business. And so they're probably causing a lot more damage than needs to be done, because they can't come down and actually sell a roof retail model to a homeowner.
Oh no, I don't want to hear it.
But like I said, I think it's dependent on market. But we hear and see of it a lot in Georgia. I personally know of a roofing company where the owner actually went to jail for vandalism.
How bad is the problem in your estimation, Taylor?
Up here in the Middle Tennessee market, I have not really seen it a whole lot. The very first company that I worked for here in Tennessee, they pretty much outlined it during the interview process. Hey, if you're caught manufacturing any sort of damages, you're gone. And then I'll get out in the field and be meeting with these adjusters, and just like Nick said, they'll have that chip on their shoulder right when they get there, or maybe the roof has damage on all four slopes, and the adjuster immediately wants to kind of start looking at you as far as, hey, no roof is going to have damage on all four slopes and things like that. Or, the adjusters will actually gossip about other roofing companies that they've caught manipulating shingles and causing damage. Because there is adjusters that will pull up in personal vehicles or cars or something like that, parked down the road. And I know for a fact have caught roofers on video manufacturing damage. I couldn't tell you what percentage. I do agree with Nick in regards to it would depend on the market. We're blessed in Nashville because we do get wind and hail. We get, the insurance companies are obviously more apt to buy hail in my market than wind. So that's kind of what we're looking for. So as far as the actual percentages, I would say it would depend on market.
What's the real damage? What's the real problem if this is, people are doing this? If you're talking to a roofing company that's feeling a little icky right now because they feel like, oh, maybe I'm the problem. Is there really a problem with this? What is the real problem if folks are doing this? What is going to happen long term potentially?
The biggest one that I see personally is roofs that maybe have another 5 or 10 years of life left into them are being caused to be damaged to the point where whether the insurance company can tell it's man-made or not, is therefore paying to replace a roof maybe 5 or 10 years earlier than it should be, or maybe it was damaged in the next storm and it was going to be replaced anyways, but all it's going to do is be leading to potentially premature insurance claims, and then an influx of claims, rising rates, and then obviously much more difficult adjusters to work with, and insurance companies tightening down on roofs that they're actually paying to replace. And that's why I think we're getting so much pushback on full replacements versus repairs, and then we have to be more knowledgeable of whether a roof is actually repairable or not.
Yeah, I think that's kind of the one thing I really want to call out here is this type of thing affects, if this is like going on a lot, it affects your market. It affects the way insurance companies play, because we can play nicely here together. You know what I mean? Potentially,
Yep.
right. I'm not going to be the one that says, "Oh, that's so bad that the insurance company pays out for," that's not that bad of a deal. But if it affects the long-term relationship with roofing companies and there's an antagonism back and forth, and then insurance companies legitimately, you think about the video with the guy up on the roof, Raymond Little, the antagonism that can start now because the insurance company is saying no to this legitimate claim, and there's this back and forth tension that just ramps up because there's too much of this. There's too much vandalism, too much man-made damage. So ideally there'd be less. But is it actually lucrative? Is it actually bad for these roofing companies? Or is it not the worst business model? That's just between you and us. Is it not the worst business model? What is it?
So what I would say with, as far as their business model, honesty and integrity goes a long way. So if that's their only way they can rely on to get a claim bought, how else are they going to run their business when they're taking care of that customer? If they're lying to that customer to get them a roof, what else will they do is also my opinion. But yeah, it's, of course, that's why they're doing it. It's lucrative. They're making money off of causing the damage versus coming down and saying, hey, Mrs. Smith, you got 2 damaged shingles. Your roof's, you got 20 or 3-tab shingle roof. It's only 7 years old. We can repair it today for $500. Call us next storm. And every time Mrs. Smith is going to call us back.
Rejuvenation and
yeah, exactly.
Average cost.
They're
a sponsor, so I gotta say it. No, just Ugly Roof. UglyRoof.com.
Yeah, no, for real. We use Ugly Roof as well, and are a vendor of them, and that's been a game changer. But the thing is, these sales guys, I was talking to it about with a ladder assist today. Is a lot of these guys that are doing this are not really, in my opinion, true salesmen. They're inspectors that can get people to sign contracts. And that's what it boils down to. It just comes down to improper training and actually training your sales guys to look for legitimate damages. And if the roof doesn't have storm damage but needs to be replaced, knowing how to sell the homeowner on an actual roof replacement and not causing those false claims to go through.
What size of companies are doing this that you've seen? Is it
anywhere from
small guys chucking at trucks, or are there big roofing companies that this is kind of part of the business model?
In our market, yeah, there's bigger companies that provide that way. Even on the even on the aspect when there is storms, we also see this on the tarping side. So like last tornado we had in 2020, there was a certain roofing company, it's a huge roofing company, and they were coming through and they would tarp, they use synthetic felt, and they would tarp the whole house. The adjuster showed up and said, "Hey, we need a tarp pulled off so we can see what kind of damage is there." It'd be like 5 or 6 missing shingles on a whole roof, and they were tarping the whole house and charging like $4,000 for a tarp bill, and then thinking they'd get the roof replaced because they tarped the whole house. When turned out, the adjuster ended up having to change that claim to a vandalism claim. Which that's another thing that like is when this ends up being proven that this is what the salesman or the roofer or whoever did cause damage to the house. That claim gets changed when it's a mechanical claim. It gets changed to vandalism. That's a whole different type of claim on a homeowner's policy. Like man-made, like acts of God, like storm damage does not affect your policy or your rates a lot of times, but a man-made vandalism claim will kill your rate. Like your insurance will jack up afterwards.
Yeah, Talk to me about the mines. Sorry, go ahead, Taylor.
Oh, no, I was going to kind of piggyback off what Nick said a few minutes ago about it. It really does boil down to training because so many of these companies, and I know the one that I worked for was doing well into the 8 figures, or the low 8 figures. I don't want to say well into it, but they had no sort of systematic training in place. So a lot of, I don't even want to say the owners know that a lot of this stuff is going on when the company gets to a certain size. You get 2 or 3 maybe of their top guys that are out in the field. They've figured out a way to work the system. And then these new guys get tossed in with them. They find out, hey, this Nick guy's pretty cool. I'm going to show him how to make some extra money when the roof doesn't quite have enough damage or when it doesn't make sense on our commission for us to just sell a repair. When really, like Nick said, when you can just come down, hey, you have a couple missing shingles, here's what I can do. I'll put you into our database. We'll follow up with the next storms, and then gives you an opportunity to be back in the neighborhood, stay in touch with those contacts, and then get referrals for doing honest business. So it's a training issue, and I can't wait to get into the fact that it's a training issue on both sides of this industry.
Top rep. We're doing top rep, and it's great training.
So you got to have that defined sales process. Chuck Toki specifically, I don't understand how people make it with a defined sales process as an established company, but just starting out, you definitely need to have that because they need to know, like, and trust you through the whole process in order to give you money.
Right.
Yeah, talk to me about that in 1 second. But before we get into that, I just want to ask, what about that mindset of, well, whatever helps the homeowner?
Well, it's funny you say that because since we're being vulnerable here, the very first time I got into roofing, I was in automotive sales for 5 years. And I was all about providing service. And when I got into the roofing industry, I got sent to North Carolina to train. And the couple months that I worked with this company, I was trained to create damages. And the reason was that we were helping the homeowners because they already had some damage. They just didn't have enough. And it wasn't until I got away from that company and that mindset of people that I realized, like, holy cow, like what we were doing was very wrong, because there was a few roofs that I had been on that I participated in. And if that's something that ends up coming back on me, it is what it is, because it's not who I am now or how I operate. It was how I was told at the time. And it was compelling because you really felt like you were doing something noble. You're like, I'm helping this homeowner because they've already got damage, when really, you're doing it in order to pad your own pocket, and you didn't even realize it. So I was grateful that I did get around a group of guys in the industry that had integrity, and that I was able, and can say thankfully now in the Tennessee market, I have not one time even tried to do anything like that, because it doesn't make sense to me. I don't want to go to jail over something silly like that. I want to do honest business, and I want to be able to go home at night and hope that I've treated my customers the way I would want a roofer to treat my mom.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of back in, with the deductible. Whenever someone would ask if you'd eat your deductible, like, hey, if I'm ever going to commit a felony, I'm going to make money, not lose money. It's the same. it's the same thing with with this damage is, they think they're helping the homeowner, but a lot of those times, the claims I look back where these guys are doing that, you can really fight these claims. Like if they say there's only 3 shingles damage on the roof, and like homeowners file a claim, homeowners set on getting a roof replacement. There's way more options to get that roof bought than to try to create more damage so it looks more like a replacement. Like you can fight the fact on like the roof is out of code. You guys got building code and ordinance in your policy. You can fight the fact that, hey, this roof's not repairable, so I can't just repair these 3 damaged shingles. The whole roof needs to be replaced. So I think there's still ways to help the homeowner, Tim, without having to cause more damage to the roof if you truly know what you're doing and how a roof is built and what kind of code goes in. I mean, just like with the storm, I was talking to a homeowner today. He had a bunch of damage on the front, none on the back. And I was like, hey, by code, we got overlap felt 2 feet each side. So, I mean, by doing that, we should get to replace the back of your roof.
Yeah, and I think it's people trying to avoid repair. Like that, the 2 things is like not being able to sell retail and then avoiding repairs in your business. And I wish I could help. I know I'm not personally going to be able to help, but like by referring out sales training and stuff like that, like help people be able to sell retail, because I think that's good to have both sides of your business personally.
No doubt.
And then repairs. Like if you can find a way to make repairs lucrative, and like I think that part of that could be cleaning and maybe rejuvenating the shingles. Why am I pushing them so hard? I just feel like it's part of this conversation.
Right.
To be real, part of this conversation, because if you don't know how to make repairs lucrative enough, then you're going to avoid them entirely. You know what I mean? Like, and that's part of it is like, we need to figure out a way to make this make sense in a business model so that not everything has to be a replacement.
Right.
And
go ahead, Nick.
I was saying, I don't mean to like hurt feelings, but in my opinion, if you're a roofing company who can't make roof repairs, are you truly a roofing company? Right. Or are you just like a paper contractor pushing out roof replacement jobs? Because, I mean, we do close, before we brought on Ugly Roof, we were already doing close to between $800,000 to $1 million in repairs per year. And we do a lot of repairs. We got a full-time repair tech. That's all he does. And so, one, the sales guys like to sell them because, that's extra cash for them. But 2, it's just easier for us to manage it, and the profit margin is actually higher on a repair than a replacement. Now you got to do 3 or 4 repairs, to make the money you would make on a replacement. But the referrals, that's the thing. These guys turn down repairs. Usually the lady that signs up for us and gets a $600 repair refers me to her neighbor or to her friend or family member, and that's a $30,000 roof.
Right.
So people are missing that referral network.
Right.
So let's talk about the 2 sides of the industry too. I know that I want to keep the conversation moving. So we talk about the roofer, but what about adjusters? And what kinds of adjusters? Why is, because you guys said that sometimes there's damage happening from not the roofer. So why does that happen? And what is the situation where that makes sense? Talk to me through that.
Well, I know in my market, for instance, here, I mean, even when I was down in Georgia, I know when I was in Augusta, USAA used nothing but independent adjusters, because you've got staff adjusters who are employed by the carrier, work for the carrier. Then you've got your independent guys. The independent guys are typically working for another company. They may have their own LLC and they're subcontracted out, but they typically have a lot of independent adjusters, from what I hear, tend to have just as much of an interest, a financial interest in some of these claims as some of these roofers do when they write these. So when they go out, I've had one out of Augusta that was saying that they actually received a percentage of the total claim payout. So the more line items he wrote for actually meant that he made more money. Don't know how true it is. I've never been on that side of it, but I've been on the roofs with adjusters before, and it's had some damages, and I'm usually transparent and say, hey, I told the homeowner there was only a certain number of shingles damaged. They insisted on filing the claim. So I'm just here. I'm here to help you out. And some of these adjusters will actually say, well, we'll just make sure we get enough to make it look good on the camera so that it passes with the desk adjuster, and we'll just get this whole thing taken care of. And I can probably say I've been on more roofs with adjusters that have flipped a few shingle tabs to get the whole thing where they could get it approved than I've been with other roofers that have done that. So,
Interesting.
Nick, I don't know what you've seen on that.
Yeah, I mean, I would agree, right? Because I think we like to have good company, so it's probably the same. I probably witnessed it personally more from insurance adjusters than roofers as well. I mean, I remember the same thing. He was a subcontractor for USAA. If he showed up, every roof got bought.
Yep.
So kind of looking back, I'm like, man, I appreciate this guy because he bought every roof, even the claims that you tell the homeowner not to file a claim.
Yeah.
And one of the roofs I was on, I was actually on the ground. I'm on the roof. One of my guys was on the roof with him, and I literally watched the adjuster rip the shingle and just chunk it. I mean, just shot the shingle into the woods. But same thing, they get paid per claim. So it comes back to that greed aspect where they want to get the roof bought, so they're trying to look for more photos. And I saw another adjuster, and if you're going to do the two options, like if you're going to tear shingles or do this, I kind of liked what this adjuster did, but he didn't have enough damage on the back, so he just chalked it out. He put front slope equals, and then he erased the front, put back slope, and then put a higher number, and just took pictures of the same shingles again. So he lied on camera, but he didn't make any extra damage to the roof. But yeah, you see it on that side as well. And I was telling this ladder this morning about it, and I was talking about this call we're going to have, and I was like, man, I've seen so many adjusters make damage. He goes, well, that's not as big of a deal. I was like, it is, because when that adjuster gets on the roof with this roofing salesman that's just got into the industry and he sees an adjuster do it, now he thinks that he's allowed to do it. Like, it just puts that, like, all right, this is okay type of mindset in their head.
Right.
So that's my big issue with insurance companies. Like, you guys are like attacking roofers and thinking roofers are doing everything wrong, but then y'all can do it to get it bought, and then it's not a big deal.
So I guess that kind of brings us to this deep philosophical question, which, are we just moralizing? Taylor, Nick, and Tim, and there's people out there that are like, this is part of their business model, and they're justifying whatever helps the homeowner and stuff like that. Are we just moralizing?
Maybe. But it is an issue that's out there. Now, what percentage of people are actually doing that on both sides of this, whether it's the adjuster side or the roofer side? But at the end of the day, what we're dealing with is a moral issue and an integrity issue, because guys that are doing things like this are the same ones that may get a little aggressive when they're doing a repair attempt to show that a roof is irreparable. Maybe they're going through and trying to break it and cause mat transfer so that they can show that there's going to be a domino effect when they do this repair. If they're going to try and manipulate the system on manufacturing damage, they'll manipulate it all the way up. So we've got a moral and a character issue at the end of the day.
Let me just challenge you for a second, because I want this to be the most constructive possible. There's moral issue to insurance companies not paying out when a homeowner paid in. Mm-hmm. So if they can play this game, and I don't want you to agree with me here. I'm just, rhetorically asking, if they can play this game, why can't we play this game? Mm-hmm. I mean, insurance companies aren't paying appropriately sometimes.
Yeah, I think, Tim, we all just want a perfect world where we pull into the driveway, meet the adjuster, and shake his hand. He's like, how much storm damage is on this roof? And we go, hey, man, this is what's going on. All right. Per their policy, I'm going to write up to replace the roof. Sounds great. Shake their hand. But like you said, insurance companies are trying to not pay for replacements. But it kind of like, at the same time, I was like, where did that start? You know what I mean? Like, did contractors start giving insurance companies a hard time first, or the insurance companies being as greedy billion-dollar businesses as they are, did they start denying roofs falsely first? And I'm going to tell you, man, if you're a roofer and you're having a hard time with getting stuff bought by State Farm, making mechanical damage is not going to help at the same time, though.
Mm-hmm.
And you're going to have a better chance of fighting on the fact that, is the roof repairable? What's in their policy? Do they have building code and coverage? Maybe even having to use a high-level public adjuster is going to make you way more successful.
And that's the other thing. That's a push to get more people involved with organizations like the American Policyholder Association, or those guys that are pushing to make it more available to have public adjusters nationwide to where the clients can have an advocate, because the way that I always refer to it as when I'm talking to a homeowner and we're going to have the adjuster meeting, I'm like, hey, having me there to identify what I've found with the adjuster is very similar to having your attorney when you go to court. You're not going to go up and try and fight this judge without having somebody that's an expert in the issues that you're dealing with, because in the event that there is any moral issues on the adjuster's side, that's going to transfer over to the homeowners as well, which is just as bad as roofers that are manipulating damage to get claims paid. So it's more of a reason for higher level advocacy on the carrier side as well as public adjusters and things like that, in my opinion.
It's time you rethink roofing. Okay, so Refresh, Repair, Restore is not just spraying oil on a roof and rejuvenating the roof. We go in and we soft wash the roof. We have to get rid of that algae, because that algae actually takes root in your shingles and is tearing your shingle apart on a micro level. So we clean that roof, we get it spotless. We do the necessary repairs that need to be done to your roof, and then we rejuvenate it and bring it back to life.
Couldn't agree more. I'm excited to get my APA polo. I'm waiting on APA. Send that out. So do you guys think there's going to be blowback on this one for me as a guy who's facilitating this conversation?
There shouldn't be.
There's
going to be
some
some. There's going to be some roofers pissed that we're talking about this openly and honestly. I don't see any other conversations like this happening on the internet. And maybe you guys see them a little bit. Like, I'm part of some of those adjuster Facebook groups, and I'm sure maybe you guys are too. But yeah. And then obviously on the roofing groups. But yeah, I just don't see a lot of open and honest, vulnerable conversations about this particular topic. Which ultimately, if we could resolve it, just one podcast resolves it.
Right.
If we could resolve it, there would be more trust on both sides, and I don't think we want insurance companies to go away.
Right. Well, and it's almost a little taboo, really, because like, people know when they're doing this, and I think the percentage may even be higher on both sides than what any of us really understand, or maybe not. Again, I don't think you can put a finite number on that, but at the end of the day, they know that it's going on, and just hopefully it's something where, as technology advances, I know with things like RoofHawk, AI, things like that, that eventually it's going to be to a point where nobody has to climb roofs. So maybe potentially this is something we just have to ride out until technology can meet up with the fact that we don't even need to get on roofs. I know my wife would love that.
Yeah. What are your thoughts, Nick? We're generally, I make these podcasts like 30 to 40 minutes, so we can. I'd love to hear your thoughts on that subject. And what do you think is going to happen? Basically, like, what do you think is going to come of this over the next 5-10 years?
Yeah, no, I mean, I agree with Taylor, and one, insurance companies need to continue to have extremely trained adjusters that can show up with an honest and open mindset to truly be there to identify damage. And same thing with their ladder assist. When a ladder, the most annoying thing to me is when a ladder assist shows up that's getting just paid $150, $200 just to climb the roof and take photos. Like, that's your job, is just document the damage. And then they start trying to talk about what they think what's wrong with the roof and what they're qualifying as damage is. And then try and talk policy with the insurance, with the homeowner or the insured. I mean, we run into that a lot too. But I think as we advance, I think carriers are gonna start asking for legitimate, softwares for roofers to maybe even like to have to work insurance processes, And I honestly think it should be stricter to be a roofing company, And
100%.
I don't know how Tennessee is, but in Georgia, you just need an LLC. Like, it's too easy for these guys to pop up shop, so they're not doing a lot of their research, and they're getting undertrained. They're jumping up, and they realize they get their first claim bought, and they make good money, and then they think, like, man, I can do that again. I can do that again. I can do that again. And now they got 6 guys working for them. They're all doing the same thing, And I think we go back to the honest mindset and like, look, man, you can make a really good living as a roofing contractor or as an adjuster and be honest and be fair. And that's going to actually drive your business further in the long run too.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree with that, Nick. I do wish that it was a little more difficult to become licensed to do this, because in Tennessee, I have my license, insurance. Certain municipalities, you can operate up to $25,000 without a license. I didn't even want to go into business, even if I stayed out of the ones that were a little more strict, just because I wanted to have that layer of licensing there. But I went through at the end of last year and got licensed in Tennessee as a public adjuster because I got sick of State Farm on this one claim that I knew was violating the policyholder rights of one of my clients. So I called Tennessee's Department of Insurance to see if a licensed contractor could be a licensed public adjuster as well. And Tennessee is one of the last states left that can do that. And when I tell you the process was strenuous, I mean, they looked into financials, criminal history, fingerprint reports. I mean, they dove into everything. You had to have your surety bonds, errors and omissions insurance. If it was half as hard to become a licensed contractor as it was to get that public adjuster's license, we would cut down on over half of a lot of the issues we see in contracting.
Hey, well, yeah, it's good to hear, because in Georgia, it's like, oh, you're a felon? Here's your roofing company.
Right,
you know,
right.
I mean,
You know, and I
first,
don't.
with this tornado, I just saw a guy riding around. He's got yard signs in people's yards, and I also got an alert when his mugshot came through on my phone. So I'm like, that good guy just got out of jail. He's got 6 people signed up. What is going on here?
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. You know, and because I mean, or the other thing would be that there's some way that can regulate where, you know, because as being a public adjuster, it's a fiduciary role because you're dealing with finance and insurance. But when you're a roofing contractor that does 100% insurance work or 95% insurance work, I think you should have some sort of licensing in insurance to understand what goes on that aspect. Because I've got licensing in property and casualty insurance as well as public adjusting. And so I see both sides of it. And I do think that would be like, hey, you want to sell insurance and deal with insurance companies? Great, get licensed in it. It's just me. That may get me some pushback.
Yeah.
No, I totally agree with that. That's probably not a bad idea for if a roofing contractor anywhere in the U.S. is going to actually work a storm claim. They need to have maybe a certification or a license to work those claims.
I think
And if
something.
they don't, then they can't work the claim. And as far as a homeowner, then you're getting a contractor that's like certified to actually work storm claims.
That's or be a retail contractor.
Yeah.
You know?
And everybody, that's what I'm saying, back to earlier, like every roofing contractor should have that retail model. Unless you're just all you do is storm chase and you actually travel the country. Like if you're based in Georgia, you cannot 100% work storm work. Like we have one storm a year, whatever it is, but
I got a sock with some marbles in it that says different.
And back to helping a homeowner is crazy. The funny, the interesting stuff a homeowner will tell you when you get up to their house. You're like, oh yeah, you got some cleats on or some golf balls you're gonna take up there.
Yeah, I've had homeowners tell me that.
Got a leaf blower for you, and I'm like, no, we're good. I'll let you know if there's anything going on with your roof.
Yeah. I've had homeowners that I've told, hey, great news. That storm that came through. You have no damage. Your roof looks great. And they'll laugh and they'll be like, I'll get up there tonight and I'll call you back later. And, we'll have a good laugh about it, but you halfway hope they're joking.
Yeah.
Yeah. I definitely hope they're joking. But
why not? Why not? Give me that last little, why not create man-made damage?
At the end of the day, for me, it's illegal. It can lead you down the road. And all it's going to do is cause more chaos, more confusion, and more division between insurance and storm restoration.
Yeah, I agree with Taylor. And it's, man-made damage, like I said, as far as a claim goes, it ends up changing the claim process. So it turns into vandalism. So if you're someone who breaks shingles or rips shingles off a roof, you're also looked at as like somebody who goes spray paint the side of somebody's house.
Mm-hmm.
It's truly, that's what it is. You're vandalizing the home. You're vandalizing something that may not even to be done. So it does create a separation. It does, when it's happening over and over, wherever it's at, like these adjusters got that in their mindset. So long term, if insurance and roofing or insurance and storm restoration contractors are all going to get along, we got to have that honest and integrity about us, and everybody needs to work well together and know that the least amount of people making damage, the better processes are going to go.
Yep.
I think this is a good mindset. I hope this is useful to some folks out there. If nothing else, having this conversation, because it's had behind closed doors, and now maybe people can just feel a little relief just talking about this a little bit out in the open, and knowing that there are quite a few roofing companies, I think it's most, that don't do this and that are hoping to improve the industry and improve the reputation of roofers. And I believe that that's, a realistic future that we can work towards. And if not, insurance companies clamping down is going to cause us all a lot more grief. I'm not moralizing. I'm just the guy facilitating. And I really appreciate you guys hanging out and talking to me about this. You guys are both amazing guests. If you guys don't mind just saying your name and your company.com to sign us off.
I'm Taylor Ammons, and I'm with ParagonRoofingTN.com.
Yep, I'm Nick Branon with YourRoofHero.com.
Awesome. This is the podcast is Hook Better Leads, put on by HookAgency.com, Hook Agency all over social. Thank you guys so much for watching and or listening. Bye.